Hello. So, welcome to another episode of Community Voices. Now, there is one question that has been on a lot of our minds. So, what if the best service designers don't really have service design in their title? Now, our community is filled with so many people who started doing service design even before they knew what service design was. And they didn't even know what it was called, but they just did it intuitively. And slowly, as they're expanded and got to know about the industry and met more people, they figured out, hey, there is actually a name for this profession or the things that I'm doing, and that is service design. Now, if you've been asking similar question, then this episode is for you. Because today's conversation, we're going to dive exactly into that and explore what is service design beyond job titles, and do we really need a job title to be practicing it? Now, before we begin, let's do a little bit of an interactive activity. Tell me in the chat and in the comments where you're joining from and what's the most non-service design service design job you've done and what is it called? Like, was it, I know I put this on Instagram, so some of you have already replied. There is product manager, some people have told me solutions architect. So what is the job title that you hold or you've come across? Tell us in the chat below as we begin. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us, our beautiful SDN community. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you're present in the world and you're joining us from. We welcome you to another bi-weekly episode of our Community Voices. And today we are going to have incredible SDN ambassadors who will join us and who are also will be helping us shape some of our future conversations and communication. And so today we'll be exploring what service design skills show up beyond the titles. We already discussed that. Then in how many ways people can practice service design across different industries and roles. And then finally, what's the future of design where people who bridge these gaps and disciplines really look like? So I'm super excited to bring our guest to the stage. And I'm Sudeshna Mehta, your host and SDN Ambassador. And yeah, let's begin. Before we dive, can you drop your questions in the chat? We do have a Q&A section at the end. So we're going to pull you all those questions live and have a discussion. All right, perfect. Let's begin.
Hello.
Welcome, Genevieve. Welcome, Sakshi and KREATIV. It's so lovely to have you.
It's lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for making the time. I see some of the people are just replying to our previous question about, hey, there's product analysts and product conceptors. So that's interesting. That's a question we circulated in our social media to see what are interesting titles that come up. So I guess I'll ask you the similar question to start us off. Like, what is this, like before you discovered service design, what did you think you were doing? Like, what was your discovery of it? And yeah, like a quick confession, what was happening behind the scenes? Who wants to start us off first?
I can go first.
Yes, Sakshi, tell.
So I was actually introduced to service design quite early during my college, but what attracted me to it was the fact that it was UX for all stakeholders involved and throughout the journey, basically. So before tagging it as service design, I used to tag it as UX.
Okay. UX design, yes, very common. I am curious to hear how it's different, but let's go to the next person first. Jen, you want to go next?
Yes, first of all, a big hello from Berlin. So happy to be here. And for me, service design actually started when I was working as a consultant. My title is still experience designer, but I choose to add service design to it because every time when I want to understand why, then I need to understand the backstage, the front stage, and that is where service design comes in. And I think a lot of the misconception is that it's just about understanding like just one part of a product and that's it. But it is so much more. And yeah, we will dive into this. But this was the first time when I really understood okay, now I'm doing service design. And no one told me this before, but it was so needed that I understand the whole journey and the back and front stage.
That resonated so much. I mean, so many people like discover it through practice rather than being like, hey, this is a concept, this is the framework.
Mhm.
It's more like backward. I've done all this and suddenly like, oh, this has a name. I have been doing it for a
Yes.
couple of years now. Amazing. Kirti, what's your story?
So, for me, before I discovered the term service design, I honestly thought I was just fixing operational chaos behind the scenes because I started my career in retail after I completed my master's in fashion business management, and I started working as an associate product manager with a designer label. But on paper, although it looked like a lot of business value or a lot of business focused tasks would be involved in it, I was constantly connecting people and processes and translating information from one place to the other,
Yeah.
and everything from the grassroots to the designers and everything in between that happened. So what I was really doing was that a hell lot of work and coordination that was going on behind the scenes for me, that was directly creating some sort of experience for the users. So I think before I could start to realize that this is a large chunk of what service designers also do, I think I was just doing a mix of fixing chaos, honestly, and being like a bridge between various departments and people at my workplace.
I love that. You articulated it so well in terms of being a bridge between departments and also like navigating chaos. I think we all should like get an award for navigating chaos and uncertainty. Uh, as service designers. I also see Helen, who is joining in from Sydney, who tells us that she is a CS lead and innovation lead. So that's interesting. Now, talking about titles, we've talked about what is your service design journey discovery like. I'm curious about what your personal and professional journey has been that's kind of shaped your perspective and views on being a service designer and what are some of the design values that are really important to you.
Maybe I'll go first.
Sakshi, I love it. I'm going to pick you first.
All right. So I pursued bachelor's in design and then master's in anthropology. Profession wise, I started as an experienced designer. I then worked as a product designer, then product manager, and then product marketing manager.
Oh my God.
Finally, currently my title is senior product designer. However, in like that, my title has changed quite a bit, but it was mostly based on the business requirements in the companies I was working for. But my job of understanding people and designing the systems around them, that has always remained the same in all these titles.
Yeah. And I think that's the perfect intro to the episode wherein you're like, oh,
Yes,
beyond all
yes,
titles. We have the theme that says, yeah, you're practicing it beyond all
yes,
titles.
right.
What about, I know Kriti touched upon it a little bit. So, Jen, I'm going to have you go next. What are maybe the different touch points in your life of different titles and where have you come to now?
Yeah, I mean, I had so many titles in my life. I mean, I started as a communication designer, and from there I thought, oh, I want to go more into three-dimensional things, working on packagings where I can combine my graphical skills. And then I did this. And then I realized, oh, I want to also do some abroad time and really discover a different culture. And then I was studying industrial arts at San Francisco State with a Fulbright scholarship. And there I got acquainted with design thinking, because before that I got like marketing briefs or this was the task, and somehow we did all design thinking, of course, right? But then it was really like a framework that I got introduced to. And from there it was okay, starting with a problem, and then it can be any kind of solution. And I think this resonates also very well then with service design, where you also take a look on the touch points and understanding different layers, and then you define a solution and a portfolio of initiatives. And then from there, after my time abroad, which was really nice at that time, I went back to Germany, worked also briefly as a packaging designer, but then realized, I don't want to do this. I want to do more things where I can really use this service design, but also design, like design thinking approach. And then I started working as a consultant, experience design consultant most of the time, but also then I was also working as a product manager kind of as well. So many titles, but always within the 9 years that I'm active in my profession. I would call myself always a consultant, a bridge maker, as also Kirti mentioned it as well, because you need to translate between engineers and business people and other stakeholders in the business. And I think this is where service design comes in again, with all the approaches and methods that you can take from there.
That is so true. Thank you for covering all that. I was just lost and like resonating with my own journey. So I also thought, like, I started out as an engineer, then went into business development. And that's
Yeah.
how I came across design thinking. I guess that's the first thing that I came across in a workshop. And then it like opened up a whole universe of service design, system thinking, course. Like,
Mhm.
there were so many different topics that I didn't know existed, and they really resonated with me. So I'm sure a lot of people have similar experiences. Kirti, do you want to add more to this conversation? I know you covered a little bit of your journey in the previous question, so.
Yeah, of course. So I started my journey with my bachelor's in commerce, which had to do a lot with finance, accounting, trade, and consumer behavior, which helped me explore a lot of domains through, variety of internships in sales and marketing and influencer marketing, so on and so forth. That led me to really, tap onto my innate creative side. I wanted to do something really creative. I wanted to, I started thinking to myself that my work should be able to make an impact to a person. That led me to discovering this master's program at NIFT Delhi that I did in fashion business management, as I said earlier, that opened the pathway to, like, again, retail marketing, merchandising, a lot of supply chain management, trend forecasting. So a lot of interesting disciplines came in together to give me like a really holistic and a broader viewpoint as to how the retail sector essentially would operate end to end. And within that domain, I found myself to be juggling between roles like e-commerce management in the retail sector, product management, a lot of orchestration being done between people, processes, information, but like unconsciously. I wasn't really aware that, this would end up being such a huge chunk of the work that I'm doing currently. And a lot of service marketing and service design was introduced to me over there. And then I went ahead from the retail sector to the education sector, where I explored being an instructional designer and creating and designing a curriculum for design schools within the Delhi government. Yeah, so that was like my point where I discovered the concept of design thinking and what it really was and how, people go about it. And as it would, the journey took on naturally, I felt really connected to that part of my journey and I wanted to explore more of it. And
Yeah.
with a lot of research done, I got introduced to service design, and I went to SCAD. I pursued another master's degree, and I did a lot of industry collaborations over there. And I finally felt like I've arrived home, because across all these touch points of sorts, I was the thread that connected me most was exploring what consumer behavior was. Why do people think they do, or why do people think the way they do? Why do people consume things that they do? And how can businesses provide the best of experiences to such users? And being again like a connector between the two has been very natural, has been very fulfilling as a
True.
practitioner in service design. Yeah.
Also, it's like one of the themes that's emerging among all everything that you guys have said is this idea of connection, bridge building, which is really interesting. So, like,
Can I have just one more comment? But this could be another topic for next episode because Kirti mentioned retail. I
yeah,
think, especially in retail, the role of AI, which is like an additional persona, and how then the journey looks like, because it is mentioned, oh, now you can order something through an AI agent, and then the journey becomes quite shorter. So that would be an interesting discussion, but just as a side note.
yeah, I'm like taking down notes. I'm like, this is our
Yeah.
next one. Love it. Okay, so thank you for that, Jen. I'm going to pedal us back a little bit into the idea of being bridge builders, connecting different phases. So whenever we walk into this room, we're constantly like, oh, we're dealing with business people. We're like, hey, I need to focus on metrics and KPIs. And then we have like the designers who are talking about uh, feelings and how they want their customer to feel. And Kriti covered a little bit of this. And then finally, we have the engineers who are looking at, hey, is this even feasible? Can we build this? Don't like build ice castles and leave us there. So I'm curious, like as service designers, we're constantly put in these rooms to facilitate between all these different functions. What does translation look like? Like, who are the people that you're translating for? And how does design really like survive that conversation at the end and have a huge impact on the business decision that we can get to? And this might be a little bit more technical, but I'm really curious how you guys approach this.
I would like, if it's okay, I would like to just give an example, right, from my practice. So, because my title is also experience designer, a lot of project starts with, oh, we are designing a product, right? And then it turned out during the work that this is actually not what they need, or what the problem will be, that the problem won't be solved with that. So then what service design also takes stuff from so many other practices like observation, taking interviews, and so on, and really then understanding, okay, what is their frustration? And in this organization, they have already for 2 years, they went through a transformation, and the value stream that I was working on, they didn't have a voice at all. And at the same time, they couldn't change the organizational structure at that point. So how can they have a voice? What, because they had really an important chunk of the product that they actually need to manage in a whole product journey without changing the organizational structure. I mean, this would be the ideal solution, right? But we are always dealing with, yeah, not so ideal constraints. And then understanding, hey, if you use, for instance, A/B testing or other points, touch points where you can measure things, then you have like a point where you can argue in a PI planning, for instance. So this is one way, or understanding also the constraints from engineers and putting it together. So I would say this is like a hands-on example where service design was needed, and just one aha moment for the client. In the beginning, the client never had an overview of the whole booking journey. So I put like on the wall like a bunch of like screens and in between steps with additional information about the backstage and presenting it, and they were like, wow, I've never seen it like in this full picture. And then they were able to dive also into like later on and do like, okay, this is really an painful touch point right now, I have this and this knowledge. Then we did also like a discussion about it. What should we then approach first? And I think service design and the methods with it provides like this overview. Finally, I understand the connecting dots. And yeah, I hope that I answered your question a little bit.
Definitely. I think that is the most powerful thing. There are so many things that are invisible in the
Yeah.
sales process. To just make it visible to our stakeholders when they can have like that zoomed out systems version. I think you've already put like a systems thinking angle to it, so I love it.
Yeah.
And then they can zoom in on, hey, okay, now we see the bigger problem, now let's tackle one step at a time those touch points. So that
Exactly.
is literally a superpower for
I
us.
actually have a point to add to what Genevieve
Yeah,
just
definitely,
mentioned.
Sakshi.
I feel as designers, we may not be experts in all the fields that makes a business successful. However, we are experts in extracting information from all these teams that they are aware of in their respective roles, visualize it so that all other teams are on the same page and we know the problem that we are trying to solve.
That again is an amazing point for alignment, being able to align so many people towards a shared vision. I think that somehow naturally becomes our responsibility moving into rooms. So I love that. All right, who wants to share next?
I actually want to also add on to that point. I see this propagating in like two very interesting points for myself as well. First, I think that the people that we, mostly end up translating between is usually the organization and the reality. Because as you mentioned, like, different stakeholders are searching for different things, and they're usually operating from a very valid but also a very partial view. So I feel like how when service designers come in, they are also able to make them see that, how the users are experiencing the consequences of the decisions that they are making combined. So that's like one thing that a lot of work as service designers also become about those groups affect as part of the larger system. And feel is also that they also act as mediators when it comes to helping organizations make those decisions and making those insights very tangible for them, very action oriented, so that the organizations are enabled to facilitate that decision at the end of the day. So those were
So,
service designers are constantly translating.
yes, that is so true. 100% in agreement. I am interested in a little bit, Sakshi and Kirti, can you share maybe a case from your experience that would really bring out what your perspective was? And also because you have a unique journey from Jen comparatively. So, what was that like? Sakshi?
Uh, can you repeat your question one more time, Sadeshna? What's the example that you are,
For like what's in decision design as service
Mhm.
design is there, like as a bridge between the stakeholders. What was that like from your perspective and your experience
Yeah.
with your unique experience? Because I know
So,
you work a little bit in
mhm.
HR tech, and I
Yes,
know you have worked
yes.
with a lot of executives. So I'm curious to learn about.
Right, right. So for most part of my career, I have directly worked with the CEO. So being part of the decision making, however, the information to the leadership is provided by other teams, right? So I have
Right.
an example here from HR tech industry wherein we were building a employee listening platform. And this platform was supposed to work in two different levels. One is between a manager and an employee, and the second is between uh, organization and between different teams. So the requirement that came from the customer facing teams was we wanted something for, it's actually called Team Pulse, something for organizations, admins, and HR leaders to understand the sentiments of the teams. At the same time, we also want to enable managers and employees to talk to each other, which was more like a meetings platform, which is very common nowadays from last, especially after COVID, right? At that time, this was the same time we were also building it. During this entire process, because the requirement had already come, we actually started with the wireframes, and during the testing stage we get to know that these are two very different levels of uh, uh, cognitive load that people had while they interacted with these two different systems. So at the end, we actually ended up separating org and team level product and employee and manager level product. And this was all possible because we mapped how the real users would actually think when they were using the product.
That is very interesting. Like, I really appreciated it. Like, yes, we do think about it, but we don't really think about it in cognitive load. So, what does it look like in form of psychology? And that's quite interesting.
Actually,
Um,
the important thing here is something that I learned from anthropology, because every system makes sense from inside. So we always need to keep asking whose logic are we designing for?
yeah, absolutely. That is now that I have a perfect question right after this. Whose logic we're designing for? This is another previous conversation I had with a design researcher in Community Voices itself, and he talked about translation. So he was from Japan, and then he worked in US, and that translation looked very different. So I'm curious because you'll also have worked across different communities, say the US, you're working in Europe, and also India. What does that look like? How does service design show up? Is it different mindset? It could be design maturity. Is it a different language altogether? So, what has it been like for you? Jen, I see.
Um, I mean, I can definitely share my point of view from Germany.
Yeah,
So I would say that even though we are all ambassadors for service design and we think this is the must have, in Germany it's not that big. Basically, what a lot of people think is that service design can be covered by a lot of other people, maybe partly from a researcher or from an experienced designer and so on. And that also might be true to a certain extent. But at some point, it becomes so complex, especially legacy systems, where you need to implement a particular person who takes care of it, no matter how you call it, right? Journey manager, whatsoever. And but I noticed that in Germany it's not like implemented yet well. However, because you also watch a little bit how the industry is changing, and I'm also part of service design drinks Berlin, so I'm also constant on this conversation. I see that there's more hiring in the healthcare and public sector when it comes to service design, so it's really slowly like a flower opening up, and this makes me happy. But then also on the other hand, I see a lot of job openings from UK, Netherlands, Australia, where service design, it seems, at least to me, it's a given. And there are like 10 times more job in service design. But when people approach me and say, hey, how I can work in service design and become a service designer, I always say, hey, don't look for the job title service design, look for something else. But if it mentions that you need to understand different journey points and translate findings and helping to improve the product from a bigger point of view, then this is where you should apply, no matter what the job title is. And it's a little bit of an investigation, I would say. It's not maybe super easy to just type in, oh, service designer, 100 job openings. No, this is not the case. So you will always find it through the description what is required. And I think also, as mentioned, experienced designer are already covering a lot of the things, but also they hear very often, oh, but this is not our focus right now. But it should be everyone's focus to think the bigger picture. Yeah, so I hope that it will become this big open flower, maybe a tree full of service design professionals, or at least people who really live service design in Germany. I hope, and I'm positive for it.
That's amazing. Thank you, Jen. And to add to your, I guess, narrative that you were sharing, there's Alina who actually shares with us that she's also from public sector, but the title was more related to mission of building capacity for democracy and human rights. And I think that's a very like humanitarian field, and or it could just sometimes be called a project manager. But the way she involved it was a skill set similar to instructional or service design, and that really goes to show that hey, oh, you don't have the title everywhere, but that skill set is a core skill set that is required. Sakshi, I know
Yes.
you have something to say. I saw you nodding.
So, in my experience, service design, first of all, is a growing field in India. A lot of people who practice service design in most interesting and meaningful ways. I feel they can't really afford to have only service design as a title. I would like to talk about this with the help of an example. For example, let's say a founder realizes that their product is broken. Product is not broken. However, the onboarding is not helping the users. So what they do is they rebuild it with a human support layer around it. Now, the founder is not a service designer. However, what he is actually practicing is service design. The same goes a lot around, for example, healthcare policies in India, right? A policy maker or a policy analyst, they are not service designers. However, it's their job to ensure the policy that they are designing, that they are bringing to the field, are accessible to the people who it is actually designed for. So I was talking to one of the healthcare program managers in Northeast a few months back, and he gave me a nice example wherein the cultural context comes into picture, and the environment also plays a big role here. They were doing a campaign wherein in Jharkhand they were providing mosquito nets in tribal areas because there was a lot of issue of malaria there. Initially, it worked out. However, when the summer reached, people stopped using mosquito nets because there was no wind coming at night during their sleep. And that was the time when mosquitoes were the most. So, understanding the environment, understanding cultural context, these play a major role. And only a service designer may may not be enough. Only a person with service designer tag may not be enough to solve for it. People in general can be taught about what service design is, what it can do for the society, what value it brings for the table, so that everyone who wants to show up, wants to solve real life problems, they can actually solve it for themselves, their communities, as well as other communities.
Thank you, Sakshi. That is an amazing example. And I had a similar experience. So before we do that, I want to open up the Q&A section. We're already at 30 minutes. And I would invite our audience to please join us and share with us your questions in the chat, and we'll take them live. All right, perfect. Now, as we're doing that, okay, so I guess I was going to continue with, I had a similar experience when I was doing mental health and psychosocial support consulting for Red Cross and Red Crescent in Copenhagen. And we had to like adapt the whole process of remote mental health to, it was a training to build capacity. We had to adapt that for Africa because we were working with SOS Children's Village. And that was a similar thing that you mentioned, that it is so important to learn the cultural context and what that looks like, because the intervention by the end of like those 2 months of cultural adaptation was so different from where we started. The entire language changed, the visuals changed, the way the system was, the overview of the system changed because the interactions look different. And also like the governance also played a huge angle because it was about, you're thinking about, hey, what is the funding model, who are the people involved, like who's going to execute it. So the entire thing by the end of that, even though we thought it was a simple like switch, it was actually developing a whole new system for this particular context.
And when you look at these things from a user point of view, it's actually so much of disruption at their end. They won't understand a thing if you as a designer don't come and intervene and make the process suitable for themselves.
Yes, that is true.
Could I add something to it? Because yes, the cultural background is very also important to consider for the end product as well. But even in my research, I did uh, like a theater kind of um, how to say, not storytelling, role play. Sorry, role play research. And I wanted basically that those sales agents play themselves, right? And I was doing it in Germany, Norway, and Sweden, and wanted to understand really like what kind of documents they are using, really understanding the nitty gritty of it and how they do like a sales conversation with me. And like people from Germany and Norway, they were completely fine with it, but the people from Sweden really had issues with it. And then it was like, okay, this research method,
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't work for them basically. And that was also interesting for me. And obviously then adjustments had to be made, but also even from that stage you need to consider the cultural background too.
That is true. That
I
is so
actually, I actually want to add like a different nuance to it as well. Like, talking about how cultural context can also really completely change our own understanding of design itself. So there was this one really fun activity that I did during one of my internships back in the US. That was a service safari of the MARTA transit system in Atlanta. And the goal was basically to document the entire rider's journey and very consciously observe every single touch point and how it made me feel. And it helped because I was riding the transit for the first time myself, so I actually was experiencing the entire journey as how a first time rider would. But by the end of it, and going through all the learnings from the safari and debriefing the entire experience, what really struck me was how deeply cultural context shapes the way people perceive the experience of a variety of services that they do. And because like coming from India, I was very used to things like having those constant security checks, the announcements, fully staffed ticketing counters, and overloaded trains. But that experience, when compared to the Marta one, the absence of many things made me feel very uncertain and sometimes very vulnerable also, that affected my emotional journey more than I had expected it to. So that activity, I think, really helped me understand that people carry their own cultural experiences, their own different mental models, and their own lived experiences in every new system that they experience. So, something that feels completely normal in one context can also feel very uncomfortable in the other. So, understanding and bringing in that anthropological lens to it can really enhance when solving for a problem like that.
Yeah, and I love how you shifted the conversation to, hey, we're service designer designing the service versus we're in the shoes of the customer experiencing it. And a lot of us try our best to lead with empathy and actually experience the systems. But it is so important that we forget that our lived experiences kind of dictate that journey. And I loved how you mentioned that, hey, like sometimes it is what's not there that you don't even realize. For someone, say in Germany, they maybe don't have announcements in airports. I'm just giving an example. That
Okay.
um, but yeah, would feel totally fine navigating that environment. But if you were traveling there as a foreigner, you'd be so uncertain which direction to go in, what to do next, because you don't have the guide that you are so used to. So I absolutely love that. Amazing. Thank you so much. And I know we're going to be wrapping up our conversation in some time, so I cannot let you go without chatting a little bit about your community experiences because we all are parts of different service design communities, and I want to get a sense of that. So, what does community mean to you, and what has um, like you being a part of your service design communities, how it has it catapulted you in a way that we don't normally observe, but it's absolutely there to support you. Sakshi, do you want to go first?
Ah, okay. I'm part of Service Design Drinks India community. I'm quite active there. I'm one of the core members. Currently, I own their quarterly publication that goes out in form of a magazine. So as part of that, I actually end up talking to quite a few people who share their work with me, who talk about their learnings from their work, and that is such a such a great thing for me because in very short span of time, I don't really have to do a project on my own to get uh, to understand how it could be like. Of course, it's a different feeling when you are on those shoes. But yeah, I feel the amount that I have grown as a designer being part of communities like these wouldn't have happened otherwise. Anytime, even at my work, if I get stuck, it's just one WhatsApp. In India, the WhatsApp groups are very common, so I just have to drop literally one WhatsApp message, and you have your inbox flooded with people who have actually come across such issues and who have solved it for themselves. So being part of a community, it is very empowering, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have one more person from SDG, but Berlin. So Jen, by the way, all of them are SDN ambassadors as well. So
Yes.
it's wonderful to see that you're part of multiple communities.
I think, I mean, Service Design Drinks Berlin also has done a pre-event with Service Design Network when the conference was in Berlin. So I think we are all one big community. So I've been part of Service Design Drinks Berlin already since 2023. We are like a small core team and we are doing every month events about different kinds of topics. Our last event was about transforming the public sector, which was very exciting and interesting. And for me, it is basically, yeah, having an exchange, understanding the current challenges, trends that are developing. Also, so many people see this as a oasis so they can vent and share, hey, I'm looking for a job or this and that problem I'm facing, and they're just looking for peers or support and help, and this is then the community to also go to. And for me it is also about, as already mentioned before, that you really get an idea what is happening in other industries or projects, which I wouldn't have if I wouldn't be so deeply involved in the community work. So understanding in the public sector, it is really sometimes detective work to understand, oh, this technical part is the reason why people within the ministries need to rethink how they enter certain entries in a legacy system, which is crazy to me, right? It's not user friendly, but then how to reshape that. And also, for instance, another topic, thinking university as a society, as a service for society. That is really interesting. I'm like already 10 years ago, I was the last time in studying as a student, but also hearing now, how is it now, right now? I wouldn't be able to have this view if I wouldn't be so deeply involved in community.
Absolutely. And Jen, you've been just giving us topics after topics. I think I'm gonna pull you in for all of those. That's amazing. I do want to say that I believe you were a detective in your previous life. You've used investigative detective so many times that come from, the detective space. Amazing. All right. Keerti, I would love to hear your experience. I know you were actually one of our volunteers with SDGC in person last year. So I'm curious to also learn about that, and yes, your broader design community experience.
Yes. So, for me, one of the most defining community experiences was being able to volunteer in person for the SDGC last year in Dallas. And I think what really made me feel at home was that being part of such communities, whether it is your local chapter or being part of a global network, I think it really gives you a platform to really put yourself out there, absorb different perspectives, and at the same time interact with like minded people. And it also gives you an insight into how other people are solving similar problems in completely different ways. And many a times, I think participating in such communities or volunteering for them actually helps you discover how many possibilities really exist outside of your current way of thinking. So I'd say to me personally, they are almost like an open source form of education and expanding my knowledge base and exchange with other people, and just to be able to meet with people tackling the same challenges as you are, but also at the same time meeting them and listening to their own unique experiences can completely expand your perspective on what's possible outside of your own little box. So it's really crazy to me how these communities can really help you gain from them a lot, because it's just bringing a lot of people that you'd love to mingle with, learn from together at one platform. So I think that was my main learning from volunteering at the SDGC, and like proactively participating in the activities or the meetups that the local chapters have. So yeah, that's amazing.
Perfect. Thank you, Kriti. And for those of
Yeah, I'm
you
sorry,
who
I couldn't
haven't
hear
got your SDG tickets, sorry?
you. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay, I was just going to say that those of you who haven't gotten your SDGC ticket, don't miss out on a global conversation with all service designers. This time it's happening in Frankfurt, Germany. So I'm sure Jen is going to be, all of us are going to be there. So come say hi to us during the conference if you see us. All right. Yeah, tell us, Sakshi, what were you
Just
saying?
one small point. While Kirti was speaking about her experience, it actually made me think like communities as an AI, like a AI with real experience in design that we could extract anything from. So just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, like the collective global knowledge.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's
like real
what you're
experiences
getting.
and first-hand experiences.
That is so true. That is so true. And I think I personally resonate with all of you. I've been part with SDN for 2 years now, and I also was a part of the global conference in Helsinki. So it's been quite the ride to get to know everyone, and the growth is truly exponential. I urge you all to definitely build your own professional communities that can bring you this knowledge and the support. Sometimes you can't really translate, okay, what is the difficulty you're facing? I know some friends of mine who are in engineering. If I go to them and be like, oh my God, the customer was so hard, they didn't know what their journey was, and we have to shadow them and map out, they don't get it. And your community truly gets where you're coming from, how you're interacting with people, and a lot of those questions that you have, and some of them have lived them before you or are there in the process of navigating that with you. So take support of your communities. Amazing. So we've come to the end of today's conversation. There are so many more questions I want to ask you, but I guess we will wrap it up for now. We'll do a quick closing rapid fire and then we'll close for the day. So one word or one sentence only. What is the most underrated design skill?
I would say facilitation.
That's it. Next is Sakshi.
Check.
Probably listening.
Listening, love it. Kirti.
Yeah, I'd second Sakshi on that. Listening without
Listening. Okay.
signing.
Everyone's on listening. Okay. Active listening, I will add to that. No, not so bad.
Yeah, not just sitting there.
Amazing. Like, next, what is one thing designers should stop saying in your business meetings?
I will do it.
Okay. I'm curious about the context, but next. Who wants to go next?
I think it is saying from a designer's perspective, also
That is so
one.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it should be the overemphasis on that's what the users want. 'Cause
Ah,
every
okay, what
department
to say? Yes, I love that. I will add, I don't feel it is right. A lot of the times you just talk about feelings, you're not giving them metrics. Why?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we should stop saying. Last question. What is one thing AI can never replace in a service designer?
being
Emotional.
human.
Yes.
I would say empathy, but also creativity as
Mhm.
well, because I think this is the one thing that differentiates us from AI.
I think Katie put it very widely as being human. I really like that.
Being human. I love that too.
Being human as well, for sure.
Yes, amazing. So I will add one more layer, which is in interdisciplinary journeys. I think
Mm-hmm.
everyone, being human, you just bring all those
Mhm.
cross industry, cross cultural experiences, and that
Mm-hmm.
enriches your design process. All right, perfect. So that's with that we come to the end of our session today. Thank you so much for joining us, Jen, Sakshi, and Kriti. It was so lovely hosting you. And you're going to be hosting some of your community voices yourself. So, super excited. These are our amazing hosts for the upcoming season. I hope all our audience is super excited, and we will see you in 2 weeks. That's 11 June. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Thank
Abhishek.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
you.